yeah, deviancy of the mind. It's corruption of the mind that has overpowered
Yeah,
the heart.
right. You become so detached that you don't even notice how sick you are. Maybe I think Eric Fromm, this famous physician, I think, spoke to that it could be actually like a sign that you're healthy if you're reacting to these things and become sick, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think in the what was it? Man's Search for Meaning? No, it was another one. It was also written Ordinary Men. Also written about the basically Nazi guards and
Mm,
officers, uh, about how ordinary people, mostly like people working in police and not like warmongers, or not like in the army, or people who have like disposition towards that, just basically ordinary men,
Mm.
how they go from like being a police officer, watching out for peace in the streets, into the phase of Nazism, where they actually take out pregnant Jewish women into the fields and shoot them in the back of their head. Basically
hmm
Mm.
laying out all of that process and how it developed. And they have written that, or like there it was written that they actually get sick, and some people actually like walked away from that and said no, and there were all these like group spirit, or like group processes, how like people were kind of convinced to carry out these things. They didn't come from evil intentions. It wasn't like I want to murder people. It always came from a place of, I don't want to let my comrades down. I don't want to let my coworkers down. I don't want them to carry the burden. I will help you know carrying that burden of having to murder
mm.
innocent people, basically. you
Yeah,
know
yeah.
so so yeah, this it's
It's like
interesting, this
partial love.
corruption.
It's not full love, it's partial love. It's love that is directed at one particular like group of people instead of
Yeah,
that expanding out to everyone.
Mhm.
yeah.
So that's interesting. It's narrowed consciousness that, yeah, is not expanded. And I could talk about my journey, different aspects of the journey where I had very narrowed consciousness and I justified certain actions, and it didn't felt like a justification. This was just my frame of mind of this is how reality works. This is what I'm supposed to do, and if it causes uh the suffering of others, and it wasn't like violent, like physical suffering, these or intentional emotional suffering, but just as a catch-all, if I focus on doing this, it's right because of this. And I really appreciated reading uh, this paper by Anne Baring describing how I myself was caught up in this Christian patriarchal view that, goes back to at least 325 AD, the Council of Nicaea, of them declaring the fall of man story and pushing that out
Hmm.
and subjugating everyone who doesn't believe in that. And somehow, I'm born nearly 2,000 years later, and all the ideas that I've been exposed to, the people and the energies I've been exposed to, there's that made sense. Like that was my frame of mind for a while. And even as the last few years, I've been expanding my awareness, opening my love up to more, understanding the divine feminine, understanding, yeah, there's duality, but also it arises from a non-duality and these sorts of things. It still took a long time for it to really sink in and click because the long-standing uh, Chris, childhood indoctrination that I've been operating through, it just like found how it was embedded in so many different ideas and beliefs and behaviors. It was like, oh, that's where that comes from. Oh, that's why I act. And it's usually all very, very subtle. And sometimes even if people try to point it out directly, you'll be like, no, that's not the case. But it turns out it was a year later. It's just so fascinating how this patriarchal view embeds itself, and especially as men, because, well, for one, all of us humans are trying to understand what the world is about, how reality works, what are we doing here, what is God, what is divinity, what is the purpose of my life? And so we latch on to things that usually is just because of our circumstance. We grow up with other adults, we grow up with other people who that's what they believe, and well, okay, because I'm so uncertain and I just want to survive and understand the world, like I'm going to pick up what you believe. And then that really roots itself as you operate through that for years and years. And it's just so fascinating. And that these are the sorts of things that contribute to the deep okayness, it seems, that a lot of, as we brought up Nazi example, that they operated with. It's like, yeah, I'm doing this terrible thing, but one, I barely even recognize it as terrible
Yeah,
because mostly, yeah.
the interesting thing about it was that they, at each step of on the way, they always had a choice. They were never forced. They
Mm-hmm.
were never forced to do these things. That is what really blows my mind. There
What do you
wasn't
mean
someone
by that? I mean,
like
they were
no
forced by
like
punishment?
no one was holding a gun to them and told them, what, you must follow this order or I will, or something will happen to
Hmm.
you.
Okay.
Like even like at these important steps, the kind of commanding officers told them that you can say no, you can walk away, you can quit, you can go home, like all these steps on the way, they always had the choice. That is the
Hmm.
most like radical part of it for me. Like it
Yeah,
was
I heard
it
that too.
came, yeah, it came from a free will. That's the crazy
Mm.
thing. Like, and that's really what makes you wonder, like, how does it? Because, as kind of, regular people, when we think about these issues like these Nazis or communists and or maybe even French Revolution, that that these events happened by some kind of really powerful, really evil, like strong, force commanding them to, or kind of, top down, I will kill you if you don't kind of situation. But no, that's really not the truth at all. Like almost
Yeah,
all of this, there was a choice. There was a conscious choice involved in these points.
right. That makes it like much more scary to realize that. And also this idea that, yeah, but there were a lot of uneducated people that were easy to control that did this. That's also not true. Like a lot of the people who carried
Hmm.
out this were very highly educated, like the top tier of society. um Carried out, like were the leaders of these execution squads as well.
Yeah. It's not a matter of
Absolutely.
intelligence and education. It's a matter of just culture, of belief, of the as men, the men that you grew up with and were fathered by, and the fraternal relationship you have with them. And this
Yeah,
this goes back 4,000, at least 4,000 years ago. And it's
Mm.
just been propagating down since.
it's really true, but you could like imagine, if you're well educated, you have more perspectives, and then you're not as easy to,
Hmm.
manipulate by propaganda to,
It's the opposite.
have a scapegoat and so on. But doesn't it's not that simple.
Yeah. It's actually like negatively correlated. Like I
Hmm.
Yeah.
think like if you look into these issues, I think you can find the negative correlation that the more you are kind of educated, I would say indoctrinated,
Mm.
without faith or without spirituality,
Mm.
the easier you are to control and kind of, another interesting thing is like even like talking about spirituality. I think many of the like I think you can see it even in the was it Inglorious Bastards
Mm.
or one of those movies, like the fact that like many of these high ranking Nazi officers, they actually used Buddhism or some parts of Buddhism and Bhagavad Gita to explain their activities, to kind of go into that um kind of Zen state, zen state of mind when performing these mass murders. So yeah, that's
absolutely.
I don't know
It's
what to do about that, you know. it's just blows my mind.
Yeah.
yeah, you could
I mean, I
say
don't.
that the more
Sorry,
intelligent, yeah, the more intelligent or smart you are, the more you're able to
Mm,
find justifications for what
mm.
is really started as an emotional imprint.
Rationalization, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just listened to podcast today and yesterday with Jordan Peterson and Thor. I shared it to you as well. What was
Hmm.
his family name? Thor Norretranders. I think a Danish physicist, and they also discussed this. What is very relevant to the article of Anne Baring as well that I shared, that this, like you said, Bruce, in the beginning, this narrowing of consciousness
Mm.
that well, and talking about also um okay, his name escapes my mind right now, but basically about the hemispheres of the brain that, you know, this,
McGilchrist.
yes, Iain McGilchrist, that this left hemisphere is for kind of narrowing and kind of simplifying and naming and filtering our you know, perception, our consciousness, our reality, really. And that, you know, taking this too far, like you know, Anne Baring goes very deep. Like she goes into into the beginnings of our big religions, like our monotheistic religions, and even a little bit further, talking about, you know, these warring tribes that came from somewhere.
Hmm.
But Peterson and Thor kind of take it a bit more into the personal level. That, you know, for example, in relationships, what happens often, you know, when you are in a relationship is that you kind of map out your partner, and then they become this mapping, or they become this map, or they become this image that you have created in your mind. And now when they start to like deviate from that kind of ideal, or oh my God, Peterson said a really good sentence for that, like simulacrum in your imagination.
Mm.
So they're kind of like a simulation of your, you know, memory. And when they deviate from that, you start to punish them, you know, all the myriad ways of how we do that. So you start to keep them in that kind of memory or model of that person. And that's what happens also with your family and your friends way in the back, you know, from way back when. Um, and that's why it's kind of hard, you know, to go to these, you know, for example, this like primary school meeting, or this class meeting, because they have this picture of who you aren't for like the last, I don't know, 10 or 20 years already. So, and same with the family, you know, you know, for us, our mother still remembers us as little boys, you know, and it also happens in the relationships. And then what happens is that we become bored. We become bored of our partner, and we also become bored of ourselves, because we aren't able to, you know, experience us ourselves in new ways and change, even though we actually have changed. We change every day, we change every year. So, and that's kind of what creates the problems. So Thor's kind of solution is, it's really interesting. I really recommend listening that
Mm.
one too. His view on life is really like, it's grounded in like deep physics, in quantum physics, which is that reality and consciousness are inherently relational, which is basically the same thing that Anne Baring, you know, writes, that there isn't anything outside of that relationship. There isn't any real other in our sense, in our existence, in our cool effects.
Right.
Signs. Um,
Hmm.
Yes.
so So his kind of view on life is also that we are relational, and we mustn't forget that we are a multitude. That that, for example, for us, our wives, represent, like, a woman represents every woman. You can't tell that, oh, this is like how she is, or this is like a particular thing. No, they change, and they can change, and they do change. And the same with us. So kind of having that preconception of having no preconceptions about people, and treating treating the world as relationships, or as relational.
That's really really interesting. And I'm just thinking, you brought up Iain McGilchrists there, the left and right hemisphere, like how it ties into that. I also heard a distinction between like the instrumental consciousness and the receptive consciousness, where we in the West are a lot in the instrumental consciousness that wants to grasp things and control, manipulate, gain power over. And it seems to me when you relate to your partner and other people in that way, that you have this image, this abstract image of who they are, that you want to grasp who they are, and then it's really uncomfortable when they deviate from that. You're a lot in the left hemisphere, the controlling instrumental one, but not in the receptive one that might be more open to grasp the whole, and not wanting to control and grasp, but be more open to and receptive to the world around us.
Yes. When there's not an
Came
equal
to my memory.
power, when there's not an equal power of the masculine and feminine in your upbringing, when they're not fully embodied, and you're able to see that as a child, you're able to see that growing up. We live in a very patriarchal society here, at least in the West. We're talking about the West. I can't speak to the East. We grow up and we emulate what we see, really. We are shaped by our environment, our influences, and it's just the case in most or many families that the father had more power, and he himself may not have been balanced within him, and just perpetuated that onto the child, onto the male child, as we're it's yes. And so with Anne Baring and many others, many others, and not even just in the last few years, like for decades, for centuries, talking about needing to bring the divine feminine back up uh into an equality of power. Of We are like different in terms of, like, the masculine and feminine are two different powers, and yet they are of the same. But as we live in a dual universe, to understand the instrumental consciousness and the receptive consciousness, how you actually have more power when you give both of them power. You yourself, when both of them are empowered, you yourself are more empowered, and you get more of what you really want. Ultimately, you get more love because you're more lovely, you're more able to attract that, and you get more done because you have more support to be able to get things done. There's just, yes.
Yeah,
A lot more thoughts from there.
for example, my, like, about creativity, my last kind of ceremony I was participating in, one like big kind of, I wouldn't call it a realization, I would say like remembering or rebalancing, was that I realized that there isn't only like the vision of what needs to happen, or you get, you catch a dream, or you have a vision, you envision something that you want to bring about, that you want to realize. Like, in that process of realizing that it isn't just the idea, or the vision itself that matters. Equally, what matters besides the vision itself is all the things and necessities that need to happen in order for that to happen. You have this, like, if you imagine like a, I don't know, like like a substance or light. Let's take tea, you know. I'm drinking tea. Like if you it's a teacup. Oh yeah, actually this way is it. So in order for you to drink tea, yes, you need tea. You do need tea. It's very important. But equally as important is somewhere to drink it from. You know, something that would catch that tea or something that, you know, would actually help prepare that tea. So that's the same with our visions. You know, we have this dream, but we also need something that would catch it. And for example, when I have my projects, I'm now more thinking about what do I need to do not to make this project happen, but what do I need to do so I can start making it happen? You know, first of all, I need time. I need dedicated time out of my calendar. Also, not just any time, but hopefully like more productive hours of my day, of which there are only 2 or 3 every day, no matter how healthy lifestyle I'm leading. There's not going to be more than 3 hours in my day where I can do really something original or productive or creative. So I need those hours, but I also need space, you know, where I can do this, where I can focus, where I can be, you know, inspired. And also other people, you know, talking about relational things. It's you know, it's the environment, it's the space, it's time, it's energy, and you know, also knowledge and skills and all of that goes into one project. You know, in Dragon Dreaming, why I really like it too is they have like taken this aboriginal kind of philosophy or perception of reality, and it is really feminine. Like it's one of the few places that, you know, not anymore, but back in the day, where they had that kind of balanced worldview, and they see reality as composed of processes, of kind of happenings, like phenomena. And for something to happen, like even this cup is a phenomena. It's not a thing, it's a phenomena. You know, and this phenomena consists of certain people coming together, you know, one person maybe having the vision, another person constructing it, another person bringing the clay, another person, you know, in nowadays world, maybe, you know, back in the day, one person could do all of it, but then he or she still needed like a clan or a tribe around them to keep them safe, to keep them fed, whatever, you know. So it's 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 like a culmination, or it's like a crossroads of all of these different streams of processes and of people and relationships. So in this way, it's like a spider web that culminates into this, you know, happening, and it comes into being, and then it also, you know, goes out of being, you know, one way or another, that it breaks, or it just, you know, time will do away with it. And this is kind of how they saw the world, like everything in it. So yeah, that's kind of my last like remembering is this space around creation, you know, whether it's a small project or whether it's the whole, you know, humanity. There's also like there's a vision, but there's also some like preconditions that need to happen to realize that vision, or within what this kind of, I don't know, evolution or transformation happens.
That is a really beautiful thought, a beautiful way of thinking about it, is the cup is a phenomenon. It is a crossroads. It is the culmination of all of these things. And each time I come back around to thinking in these terms, I think about it from like an even deeper perspective. And nothing on that point seems to arise right now. Just what started this train of thought was the two hemispheres of the brain, the left brain, and the reduction of consciousness. And I'm thinking about Anne Baring's, what she had said, and there's just I'm talking to hopefully the thought comes back to me and it's not coming back to me, but the I've pulled up here a somewhat related thought that generally speaking, people who have become aware of emotional intelligence, not all of them have an idea that there really is anything beyond their conscious rational mind, or that the two hemispheres of our brain gives rise to different ways of experiencing reality and of responding to it. Ideally, I'm reading her words verbatim. Ideally, both should work together to create a well-rounded or complete response. But if the left hemisphere with its linear, sequential way of thinking predominates, this balanced perspective may be compromised.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And the conscious mind, over centuries, as centuries passed, has become more and more detached and more inflated and omnipotent until its detachment is now virtually complete and it no longer has awareness of any relationship, the quote that I said earlier. And it's just and because the left brain, we're so left brain and it's all about rationalization, and when we're stuck in the mode of fear, and it really is the fear of death. It's really fear of uncertainty that we then cling on to our rationalization, and we rationalize really with only the information that we've been exposed to. So it's very tricky, which really the takeaway from this is it's extremely important to continue to spread awareness of and knowledge of, hey, there was even a different way that humans viewed reality before 4,000 years ago, before
Mm-hmm.
2,000 years ago. Like there was a way. It's not like and to divorce from thinking that, oh yeah, it's because they were less smart, because now we have civilization and technology, so we're smarter. So of course we changed and the new way we have is better. So the more we can disseminate the wisdom of the ancients, the more that we can also now disseminate, thankfully, researchers, scientists are discovering that there is a very real science to this sort of woo mystical ancient wisdom. Like
Mm-hmm.
even it is scientific fact. 2 days ago, someone was like, "What? Is that true?" It is a scientific fact that the heart generates an electromagnetic toroidal field that can extend usually 3 feet out from the heart. We have this field. It is generated as
Mm-hmm.
electromagnetic in nature by the heart. And even that thought alone could be enough to really crack the egg on someone's frame of
Mm.
mind that's very
Mm-hmm.
left brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so just Anne Baring says a few more things like what is the what do we need to do? She said I just want to get it right. Accurate. The new story. So awakening to the new story is about connecting our head with our heart.
Mm-hmm.
It means listening to the long ignored voice of our soul. The soul communicates through the heart, through our deepest feelings, many of which are ignored and repressed in our driven and addicted culture. Awakening to a new story means moving toward a new image of God or spirit that includes nature, matter, and all planetary life, and indeed all cosmic life. It means recovering what has been lost. I like that Graham Hancock says we are a species with amnesia. We've somehow forgotten we with in our mad driven quest to achieve and to plunder the earth to reshape its resources to in benefit of man, that has all been in a mind frame. It's all been through a belief that we are separate from it. And they got
Mm-hmm.
away with it for a bit because the consequences were long delayed, but now we are living through the consequences, and we kind of have no choice now to
Mm-hmm.
recognize that our forefathers were wrong for that. And so she says, I love this part, that it is a dangerous, challenging, and yet creative time to be alive. Like what a
Mm-hmm.
time. Like we're
Mm-hmm.
here to be able to participate in this, in the revival and the reunion of the divine masculine, the divine feminine, the left brain and the right brain. Not that those
Mm.
are exactly correlated, but It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I listened first time I heard about her was when we were doing the symposium, and one of the participants, presenters, like made songs of her verses or different paragraphs in her book, and Bering's book. Then I think, what was it, The Soul of the Cosmos or something?
I think so.
Mhm.
Yeah. Uh, but then I heard one lecture from her, and for me, just like a few months ago, and that was really like, shattering for me, like in an intellectual sense, like, or even like a soul sense, something that really grabbed me, and like, it was like a earthquake inside, because I haven't had this feeling. I've been reading transpersonal psychology and like all these esoterics and religious texts for, I don't know, like 15 years now. From the like in the beginning, I had a lot of that. I had this almost every week, because then this all was new for me. But since then, I don't know, it's been a long time. It's been at least years, many years since something like touched me like that, like, and like what Anne Bering is bringing back to the ground, which is
Mm.
not only the fact of the, or the necessity for a new paradigm and what it looks like and what it could look like, but also like how have we got how how have we gotten to this paradigm that we're in, or have been in? How have we developed this Western kind of frame of reference, and also how, like, again, conscious it has been. It hasn't been like accidental. Like, she brings, even in that article, she brings many examples of how, emperors and church fathers, actual popes, have systematically, you know, killed, destroyed, burned down like these, facilities, these books, this knowledge that talks about the divine feminine, and about the receptive side, and how, like, even, this is so subtle now, but when I was
Mm.
born, like, this was all the, like, this was, regular, that like all this kind of paganistic thinking was branded as some kind of, like, you have to be like intellectually impaired, or you have to be crazy to buy that. But now, like, N Bering is actually drawing this out on a timeline, on a roadmap, how this paganist view of the world, that every rock, every tree, every leaf, every flower, even the wind is conscious, you know,
Yes.
and how this was the original, and not just original, but I would say the true, with the capital T, religion that we had, that everything is relational, that there is no such thing as something without consciousness, there is no dead
Mhm.
matter per se. and yeah, she's really like drawing it out, how, like, by intention, by conscious choice, by actual, certain tools, this way of living and seeing the world was, you know what was the word, like, you read this quote a couple of times, Bruce, how this separation came to be, how it was separated from us, how we were separated from that kind of true, uh being, and way of relating, I would say, as well.
Indeed. It was, we don't know exactly what life was like before 2000 BC-ish. We do know is that there was a lot of war and conquest that had started occurring in 2000-ish in Europe. Um, we do seem unable to find any evidence of weapons and these sorts of things in archaeological digs from anything before 10,000 years ago and before then. Um, And so as there was violence and conquest and murder and those who I imagine so that those who were being invaded weren't equipped to war and defend themselves because that wasn't really a concept they needed other than
Hmm.
with wildlife. If they were hunters and they did hunt, sure did that, but in terms of orchestrating armies and strategizing against others, and so they fell prey to that. And then because
Hmm.
survival is an inherent instinct, they eventually started going, well, we got to learn to defend ourselves. All right, let's learn how to use these weapons and these sorts of things. So you go all the way up to the Roman Empire, skipping quite a lot. You go into the Roman Empire, and as they have these, quote, what they view as barbarians to the north that they want to subjugate, they want the resources, they want the land, they want the power. They devised a way, they realized that beliefs are the best way to really conquer people, to bring them into the fold as well. So they were borrowing as they were forming the Christian religion, they were borrowing from concepts that the indigenous people of the northern lands were familiar with and distorted them just enough
Hmm. Hmm.
to appeal to their ego, to appeal to their emotions, and continue this propagation of a masculine centered view of reality, that there is a patriarchal God that is looking down and judging on us, and in order to satisfy him you must do X, Y, and Z. And
Yeah,
there's so
and
much
and
more. This needs a whole
and
paper, but you're following.
yeah, it's like and also the dogmatic view on like spirituality, the fact that you can't, that the antithesis to Gnosticism, which is that you can come to know, you can know as an experience, you can know things, you can know God, you can know your soul, you can know the reality, you can come to know these things within.
Hmm.
So making a 180 turn from that and saying that you don't need to know, you can't know anything else other than we tell you. Only what is written
Mm.
in this book is the truth. That's and you if that doesn't ring any bells, then you've probably been living in the forest or something. Because this is what we grow up with. Like this is everything. Like you study from the books and the authority. We tell you what is true. And your you know smartness, your quality, your worth is dependent on how well you recite that, not question that. you know well, that is part of it, of course.
Mm.
Of course, the world is much bigger. I can lay you a very strong argument in 2 minutes against that as well. Like actual from actual
Hmm.
life, that yes, that's the society, that's the system, but at the same time, the system needs people to revise it. The system needs inventors. The systems need people who can actually take care of problems. So yes, inside the system, the view is like this, but when you start thinking along the system, you see that no, being an entrepreneur basically today, doing something entrepreneurial for like 3 to 5 years, you will outperform on every scale the smartest, the wisest, the most successful, lawyers, doctors, surgeons, computer geniuses, even scientists. Like you will outperform them in a few years when you really start to work with the world, with the reality, as it is, with capital R. So yeah, it's interesting. We're living in a layered world. Like there's worlds within the world, within our world. The reality is within reality. So that's really what I like about life in general. That like you can come to know something, but there's no bottom. There's only levels. Like it's the what was the story or saying, wherever it's from, it's like, so what's under the what's what's under the
Yes.
lion? Oh, it's there's an elephant under the lion. Okay, but where the world is rested upon. Okay, what's under the elephant? There's a turtle. And the small child keeps asking, okay, but what's under the turtle? No point in asking, there's only turtles. From
Uh,
onwards from that, there's only
It's
turtles.
turtles all the way down.
Yeah, it's turtles all the way down. So that's that's how I come to see the reality as well. Like there's a limit to our conception, but what we know definitely is that this limit does not in any way exhaust reality or the levels underneath that conception. So it's never gonna be
Mm.
boring.
Yeah, I love the turtles all the way down analogy. I often I often think in terms of onion, the infinite layers of the onions within myself, the
Mm,
microcosm as well as the macrocosm of reality. Like I have been shocked in the last several years of going, wait, there's another layer? All right. There's another layer. Cool, I got it. There's been a lot of layers. Surely I got it now, right? And then the last month, whole new layer just whoop popped right off and discovered. And now I finally admitted for sure I'm probably never getting to the core until at least after death. Like there are just so many layers to all of it. And this conversation just further motivates me to want to write about my experiences of how I've gone through all of these different modes of thinking, these frames of reality, very thinking from a very separate place, from deepest pits of depression, anxiety, and these sorts of things for so long. My flavor of mental deviation wasn't uh, these people are evil and I need to go kill them, or these people, ooh, it doesn't even have to be evil about the people, but oh, there's a lot of really good resources on the land that these people inhabit. I want the resources so I can build more comfort, use them to build more comfort for myself and my nation. And not that these were thoughts of mine, just explaining the examples of how wild it is that you
mm-hmm,
can frame reality, think of reality in a way that is ultimately divorced from your heart, divorced from unitive oneness. And there's a thought that's vague. It's not coming through, but when I was initially hearing about unitive oneness and these sorts of things, it just sounded so, I was so judgmental. I was like, that just sounds like some hippie crap. Like, what does that
mm-hmm,
mean? It's fluffy, it's this airy fairy. Like, what is that about? And I know that many, many other people are still thinking that. And I just wish there's a way that I'm going to unfold may hopefully connect them, get them to understand. And there's a tricky thing there with get them to understand. Okay, not going to be able to convince them by force, but how can
mm-hmm,
I articulate it and put it out there that maybe it attracts the right people to see that, and then help dispel their illusions and dispel their judgments of what is this one unit of oneness about? And it's probably going to take a lot of the scientific research that's coming out of the Scientific and Medical Network and of the Galileo Commission and these other great organizations are actually showing there is science to all this
mm-hmm,
woo stuff.
mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of uh, enchanting the disenchanted Western rational mind again. I think enchanting is a good word.
Yes, I love that word. We need, and you know, let's disenchant. Um, no, let's dispel. Because some people are enchanted. There's good, you could say good enchantment, bad enchantment. Some people are really enchanted by the idea that conquest is the
Mm,
way.
mm-hmm,
So to disenchant that and to re-enchant them with love. Oh, so there's this, and it's funny. We were talking about, oh, there's so much issue with the Christian patriarchal view of reality. I tuned in very briefly to a Tucker Carlson podcast or interview with a Christian pastor. And he said some things that I agree with, and then he said some things I don't agree with. But my favorite takeaway from that was he said, right now, the solution to the world's problems is not political. Like there is no political solution anymore. We need a spiritual solution.
Mm.
We're not
Mm-hmm.
going to be able to just stop the war by more charters, more legislation, more
Mm-hmm.
people vying and getting into power. It actually needs a different approach of reawakening the heart, reawakening the spirit, and reconnecting those with the mind once again, and having that propagate. And it's tricky, it's messy. People want solutions immediately. People want the thing to just be enacted right now. That's one of the attractions of having a dictator. Even if you say, oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's a good dictator, and it's because they want things done immediately. And the fact is, things take time, and it's the best way. Ultimately, it's the healthiest and most sustainable way to acknowledge that and to work with the cycles of nature in that way.
I love that phrase. Good dictator. We should. It
Because
could be a movie.
I have heard from the mouths of multiple people that they're like, yes, I would love a dictator if I know that he was like good. And I'd be like, I'd just
Mm-hmm.
scratch my head a little bit. Like, I get what you mean. We want an avatar to represent the group, to embody the heart and the soul. Um, but let's just maybe not use the word dictator.
Yeah, we want a good leader, a capable leader.
Because they want them to, with the dictator, they want them to dictate this is the way it is. And you kind of just can't. Like the United States has failed in the last 100 years to go around the world and dictate that, hey, democracy and freedom this way is the way, and you need to adopt this. Be free or we will kill you. Like what?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Needs a whole different spiritual approach to it.
Yeah, well, Israelites in the Bible as well at one point in the desert wished to go back. Wish the Pharaoh wished for the Pharaoh again.
Right.
That's
Right.
not the
Because
answer. That's regression.
just do you have comments, Tobias? Completely cool. If you don't, there's there were a few things in this essay by Anne Baring. One of them was Pope Innocent the
Yeah,
Third
yeah, I
was
remember that.
responsible for destroying a beautiful church. Well, Pope Innocent. So they use words, the power of words, to project sometimes what just isn't true. And yeah.
Yeah, not just a lie, but actual complete opposite of truth.
hmm And what's amazing is also, and I've known this for a while, that oh, the truth is self-evident. Jesus preached, you have the kingdom of God within you. You have the answers within you. And truth, you know, if truth is true, then, it should be shared with everyone. Why are we withholding truth?
Mm-hmm.
Why does the Vatican have archives of knowledge that they are not sharing with people? What is that about? Anyway, it just,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
what was it, yes, the Library of Alexandria, that in AD 392, Emperor Theodosius instructed a bishop to destroy the Great Library of Alexandria.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's amazing. And then we justify it because we say, oh yeah, that's just bad knowledge we need to destroy. And that's why we also can't take that approach in today's age either. It's not about going and destroying, like, for example,
Cancel culture.
statues. Yeah, exactly. Like, I have been and I attended rallies in my hometown of Richmond, Virginia, 2019, when there was a big rally to take down these statues of uh, the rebels, those who opposed the Union back in the Civil War, the Confederates. wanted to
Mm-hmm.
take down the statues because, oh, they represent evil, which,
Mm-hmm.
yes, and if we forget of where we came from, we're quite likely to actually return to it. At least in this transition age, I don't believe that we should just go and destroy another library, go and destroy another source of knowledge of our history and of what humans are capable of doing. Like, yes, they owned slaves. It was a terrible time. It was awful. The Civil War erupted and resulted in the loss of, I believe, 750,000 American lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we should not forget that we are capable of that, and that there will be a future where one day, hopefully, I see it, at least I imagine it, I dream it, where such violent conflict does not happen. But until then, we need to recognize that that is capable. And even then, we probably should remember, hey, this is what happened, and it just requires good stewardship, good leadership. It's a constant process. It'll never just be done. Anyway, that's kind of a another trail of thought for another time. I wanted to explain more of that, but I'll leave that there.
Yeah, and also the positive side of her article also, that we are bringing back this knowledge that this, that actually these at least some of these Gnostic texts were recovered and are re-emerging now, and these goddess, uh, let's say, praising culture or views or knowledge, that it is being recovered and that it is coming out, and we are the ones really, like, as these new paradigm navigators and as the scientific and medical network, we are the ones recovering this and bringing it back. And I see it also in the wider sphere too. I think we do it naturally too, like when we have the space to heal and to live in love instead of fear, and when we have the courage to do that, I think that's pretty much the only thing we can have and do. So yeah, I want to go deeper into her writing too, and
Mm-hmm.
investigate more, because mythology is so interesting. Like, even in the, like, you were talking about us not having kind of the knowledge of before 2000 AD, or
BC.
having very little. Yeah, yeah, BC. Yeah. Um, but I think we have stories. We have really interesting stories, like when we go into mythology, and
Mm-hmm.
that's basically what we can have. I mean, sure, there are artifacts, and there's some really interesting stuff regarding that as well, if you go and listen to or study what Graham Hancock is doing. And there are interesting artifacts, um, but for sure there are interesting stories. And for example, there are, like, I think, Japanese stories that are explaining or talking about the war of gods sometime, I think, like at least 20,000 years ago, or maybe more. That's, like, if you look at the images, they are pretty precisely um, talking about or picturing a nuclear war,
Yeah,
which is
something like that. Yes.
something to think about. That maybe we aren't the first. Maybe it isn't the first time we are in this situation.
Mm-hmm. Maybe Atlantis did in fact have an internet. Maybe Atlantis 1 existed and 2 did have an internet and did lose that. There's certainly some very interesting stories passed down in the Vedic. I don't want to use the word mythology. They don't like the word mythology. They believe,
Mm-hmm.
it's and we're now, due to astronomy, yeah, due to astronomy, are realizing that a lot of these stories, the way that a lot of these stories include positions of the heavens, positions of the stars in a certain configuration, they
Mm-hmm.
describe it, oh, like this, the star was over this horizon, talking about what star was our North Star at the time. We're now realizing that, oh, this story is actually dated specifically around 7000 BC. Oh, this story goes
Mm.
back to 14,000 BC because of what was our North Star at the time, how were the planets configured against the
Mm-hmm.
zodiac signs. So it goes, oh, maybe this story is true. And I don't know the
Mm-hmm.
stories enough to really talk about them, but I know there were at least two really great battles, especially the earlier one. When you said Great Battle of Gods, that's what it made me think of.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, and these flood stories and everything, they don't come from nowhere. Nothing comes from nowhere. Everything comes from somewhere. That's one of my therapy teacher's favorite sayings. Everything comes from somewhere.
Hmm.
Nothing comes from nowhere.
Hmm. And it all comes from
Yeah,
the unified field of consciousness that we're enveloped in.
yeah.
Anyway,
Like
wow.
even fantasy, it is grounded.
Maybe there are other worlds that we will go to after death that are like that. Or it's, yeah, something I can hardly conceive. Where is the dream world? What is that all about? No, we're not opening that can of worms here. Um, hmm.
Yeah, I think unless well, we haven't heard anything from Tobias. I know he's in a windy place right now, but he might have some good points to make too. Otherwise, I would like to start maybe wrapping up this episode. We've gone for an hour, and
Yes, and I would
like
love to perhaps return even to this article again and invite women, invite more of the female perspective on this.
yeah.
Uh, yes, and get more into the goddess, the get more into maybe explaining for our listeners as we're referencing this article and not they have not read it. Most of them have not read it to explain and bearings stepping through the acknowledgement of the goddess, the acknowledgement of other creation stories that I
Mm-hmm.
believe when we align with them, which yes, it's time for another episode.
Yeah, we should have a representative of the goddess, a representative of goddess
Absolutely. Absolutely.
with us next time. Yeah,
Well, yes, this has been
yeah.
a wonderful discussion with you, Remo and Tobias. So it's a pleasure to be able to not only discuss these ideas and maybe some listeners get value out of it, but it also continues to motivate me to do even more with disseminating this and having these discussions with people who also don't often think about these sorts of things. It's been, I started locally trying to have some of these conversations with my parents and some of my older friends, and they're just like also not very interested in it, which they don't have to be either.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking for more people to discuss this with. And so if we have any listeners that are interested in hearing more, interested in having discussions with us as well, do check out newparadigmnavigators.community. Sign up for our newsletter so you can get an email once a month about the activities of the month and what's coming up, as well as following us on the social medias on YouTube, on Twitter, on TikTok, and we have a WhatsApp group as well. Uh, just created it, starting to invite others. We wish to have more text discussions in there and perhaps even have larger salons, or we are having salons, but to invite them and make them more public, to invite more discussion and more participation. So do check that out. Sign up for our newsletter, and
Yeah.
come attend our symposium happening this July. Online virtual symposium, July 6th and 7th. It's a Saturday and Sunday. Cheap, inexpensive tickets. We have an amazing set of submissions that we are looking through and setting up our schedule now. It's going to be some really interesting stuff. A mix of paper presentations and creative offerings and workshops. So do check that out.
Yeah, thanks for the plug. And as I just explained to one friend of mine who got interested in our podcast and salons, that I always come out of these conversations and interviews feeling electrified, and today I definitely felt that in the middle of our episode as well, this certain sizzle and excitement within.
Let's follow that. Let's
Yeah.
sizzle up. Let's cook up something good.
Yeah. Yeah, let's let's generate some buzz and some lighting perhaps in the future.
Hmm.
Let's create waves and maybe even a storm. It's much needed.
I like to on that I like to think of the quote by Rumi, and many others have said this quote. It's attributed to many, that we are a drop in the ocean and the ocean in a drop. But specifically, we're a drop in the ocean. What if we could coordinate all of these little drops in the ocean into a generative wave of change? So
Let's
that's
do
what I'm all
that.
about now.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone. Until the next time.